For the record, we are interviewing Representative Marchand on May 25th, 2018. Do you consent to this interview?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Tell us your full name.
Theodore Joseph Marchand.
Okay, when and where were you born?
February 3rd, 1934, New Orleans, 2922 Alderman Street,
So you were born uptown?
Uptown.
Okay. What was your family background like?
My father was a carpenter. He was a
Can you talk a little louder?
he was an architect, not licensed architect, but he did a good percentage of architectural work for blacks in New Orleans.
Okay.
He had a cabinet shop, and he built houses.
Okay. And this was uptown?
Uptown.
So when did you move downtown?
Well, when I got out of the service, right before I went into the service, I bought a lot on Desalone Street in the lower Ninth Ward.
Right.
And as soon as I came home from the sale of the lot, I met a letter saying, you know, greetings, you are, and had to go to the Army.
Right.
And so I did the Army for 2 years. When I came out, me and my brother and my oldest brother became partners in building houses. Well, first we had to subcontract from other white contractors until we could build up some money to start building. The first house we built was on 1920 Desalone Street. We sold that house. Most of that house was mine because it was my lot. The money was invested into it was mine because me and my wife had saved diligently for the 2 years before I went into the Army.
Okay.
And then I built another house. We sold that house. I built another house at right in the last block of Desalone, right before the bridge, the Claiborne Bridge. Me and my brother Paul Marchand was partners then, and so we started building. Most of the houses we built was in the lower Ninth Ward, but we were still subcontracting work at the same time.
Okay.
And it got to be good. You build up, and so we broke up partnerships, and me and Rudy Bones first bought the square in Kennedy Square that we call Kennedy Square. When we bought it, when we got ready to start building, that was around the time that John Kennedy got killed.
Okay.
That's why it was called Kennedy Square. And then when I was almost completely in Kennedy Square, that's when Hurricane Betsy came.
1965?
Yeah, but at the same time, because of Rudy Bones, we bought that square in Pontchartrain Park from the Archdiocese of New Orleans.
Okay.
And at the same time, we bought 8 lots in Imperial Drive.
Wow.
I was doing well,
Right.
And of course, the storm knocked me for a loop because I had a lot of rental property in the lower Ninth Ward outside my own home. And from there, I got into Hurricane Betsy. Now, what Hurricane Betsy did to me, it changed my whole outlook on life. Before then, the only thing I was interested in was my children, my family,
Right.
and contracting. But with Hurricane Betsy, 2 people, Lee Osmo was a librarian at SUNO later on. If it wouldn't have been for them helping me with my children, I'd have lost 2. Because when the flood took over my station wagon at St. Maurice and Galvez, it came in so fast that I had other people in my car. I don't understand how I had that many people in my car, because I had about 3 other adults who just jumped in. And but Osmo and them stayed there and helped us with 2 of them. And really she was pregnant, and when we got over the Holy Cross, she fell backwards holding my baby daughter in her head. She bumps her head, pregnant.
Wow.
Now, so those things affect you. And then when I got out of the water, my youngest brother, the one he just died last April, he told me, let's go down on the bridge, on the Claiborne Bridge, and help the people out of the water. And I ran across so many people that I hadn't known was living in that kind of poverty. I was living in the night. I wasn't raised in the night ward, but I was living in the night ward, and I was just focused on building houses. And
Yeah.
but helping people out of those boats with feces all over, old people, crippled people, people couldn't walk. And then they had one incident that happened that affected me, and that was a young lady who lost her baby at Claiborne and Catherine Avenue at McCarty School. And the reason she lost her baby is they had some guys in the skiff with her,
Yes.
and these kids from St. Bernard Parish was running up and down Claiborne Avenue with a boat, and they made the waves turn the thing over.
Wow.
And I heard that woman screaming when she got, the guys see they dove down, they tried to save the child, find the child, and never could find the child.
Wow.
And I heard this woman screaming. And when, the only other time I heard her scream like that was when Michael Moore did a thing on Iraq and had this woman screaming, cursing the United States, the same, exactly, same scream. And this woman was cursing too, you understand? Now, and then what happened is that after the water went down, I had built a house, a rental property for my uncle on Jordan Avenue between Galvez and Johnson. And they had a big chunk of the levee that was thrown across the way on the, Dutch Canal levee,
Yeah.
hitting up the front of my uncle's house with no erosion at all. And at the top of the levee, you could see where it was pulled away, no erosion. And about a half a block away, they had another break. So Skiro was trying to knock out a half a block of levee.
Now, they always deny that.
I don't care.
They always say that the levee was not blown up.
Well, let me tell you one thing. You see on the other side of the levee?
Yeah.
The other side of the levee was 5 feet higher. I'm talking about the land.
Yeah.
At least 5 feet higher than on my uncle's side. In other words, the Industrial Canal, they had about one city block on the other side of the Industrial Canal that went all the way over to the canal.
Right.
And so you just had about 5 feet of water on top of that. But that's not what flooded us. It was that tidal wave that came through. Now, I know something about common sense. Those little holes wouldn't make that water come that fast at me.
Right.
Understand? Because when the water got to me, when the tidal was coming in waves, that was a tidal wave coming from the Gulf. Okay? It wasn't the Industrial Canal that did it, because they had a couple of other little places that was blown. It was minor. And so what they did in order to cover it up, they said that they was going to blow the levee, part of the levee, to get the water out. If you could have blown that whole levee, you couldn't get the water out by blowing the levee, because on the other side of on the Industrial Canal side, the levee was 5 feet higher anyway.
Right.
Okay, so that's what they said to cover it. Okay, so what happened is that Lyndon Johnson flew over the canal.
Right.
He said, get urban renewal, I can help you with urban renewal. But what happened is that the city could not get urban renewal, because before that happened, I guess it was McKitton and his legislature had seen what the urban renewal was doing up north. It was bad. There was tearing down those houses, moving the blacks up. So
Right.
the state passed a law against urban renewal. I don't want to go into the whole thing. And so I think that McKitton and most likely Skiro tried to get them to change the law. And out of all people, they didn't trust Skiro, because they think that Skiro was the one who tried to blow the levee to flood the place. And outside that, Skiro was completely racist. Okay, so he's anti-black.
Right.
And they figured that if Skiro get control of the program, is that he would do as bad as those people up north. So they say the only people who could convince the legislature to change the law was people out of the lower ninth ward.
Okay.
So one guy, Harold Catton, he was on the planning commission, came down to the lower ninth ward. They had two guys from TCA, and he brought up how we could get urban renewal. I brought up what happened up north. He said, well, you don't have to take it like that. You could fight the city. You could insist on you be participant in how they're going to do it. I agree with that. TCA said, well, we could work with y'all, but it's going to take us a year because we don't have no money for no rent.
Right.
I had just completed a building on Calvin and Choctaw.
Okay.
And I was doing, it was an office building downstairs, but I was just using one room. I said, y'all can use my building. And that's how TCA got in a year earlier, because I let them use my office building for nothing. And so that's when neighborhood council was developed.
I remember.
I'm the only person in the group who knew anything about building, so they put me over housing. And so they had this white guy, I can't remember his name, who was put in there by TCA. Between him and me and the committee that was created by Rufus Sumner, who ended up being my enemy in the end, she created a good committee, you understand?
She's still living.
She is?
Yeah. Ruby's over 90 years old. But
Okay.
she's still
Well, she created a good committee.
I didn't know that she had anything to do with that.
Oh yeah. And so what had happened is that some of the people on the committee ended up being my enemies. Sherman Copeland, he was my secretary. Okay, Pete Sanchez, I'll talk about Pete Sanchez later.
Don Hubbard?
No.
Don wasn't involved with it?
I didn't know Don. I didn't know Neil. I didn't know any of those people. The only person who joined my committee was Mr. Thompson, of the Thompson daughters,
Right.
okay? And
Right.
so it was us who had to convince the Ninth Ward legislators that we're going to be participating in that, and we ain't going to let Skiro. Now, I didn't know Skiro. I learned about it later, but we will let the city control this thing. We're going to participate in it from beginning to end. And they was hesitant, but yet instead we was calling meetings, and at the same time, I didn't understand it at the time, but 1/3 of the Ninth Ward was black, 2/3 was white. Now, with the emotional thing that was in it at the same time, because they was allowing me to go on TV and stuff and talk about it, all the blacks in the whole Ninth Ward, outside of the lower Ninth Ward, knew what was going on. And so those legislators knew that we may not be able to elect a black person, but we can determine what white person would be elected. Now, I didn't understand that. The only thing I was doing was pushing for this,
Right.
get them to do it. And so eventually we got it done.
We didn't have single member district at that time.
No, the single member
I think
district.
we had 4.
That's right, 4. There you go. And so what had happened, when it looked like we was getting it, then Skiro jumps up and wanted to run to Washington, take credit for it. And instead of him putting me as chairman of the committee with them, he took Miss Leontine Luke.
Yes.
And so Miss Luke was laughing at me, saying that Skiro was taking us to Washington. They had a dance.
No louder.
Huh?
No louder.
Okay, that Skiro was going to take her to Washington. She was grinning in my face,
Yeah.
And that was at St. David School. They had a dance there, and I was there, and she was, I don't know what it was about, some kind of, Anyway, I walked around there, and I came back to, I said, look, we're going to go there too. I'm going to take my own committee. I said, because we did all the work. I said, he ain't going to go up there and take credit for it, okay? And so that's why the people in the lower ninth were the only people in the country of New Orleans, in the country of the United States, to send a group to Washington We raised money. Other areas may send us money. Desire and Central City sent us some money, and we sent a committee up there. Okay. Now the only thing I regret about that committee is that they had a guy named Mr. Nicholson.
I remember him.
Now he was on the Voters League,
Right.
and so it was said that you would vote for one person out of each committee, something similar to that, and he wasn't voted in. And I was chairing the committee. I could have interceded, but I was trying to get everybody unified because like they had some people on the committee who had fought me all the way, but they voted for him. I said, let him go, you know. And so that's how we got urban renewal into the city of New Orleans. And that's where Mr. Thompson I met. And Mr. Thompson family I met, and they taught me all about black history.
Okay.
I was all, and then he introduced me to Niels and Don and them.
Right.
And I was overwhelmed because they had been involved in the civil rights movement when I was sitting on the side. And so, you know, you got to, they had a lot of control over my thinking, because when Skiro came along and they was he was gonna get funded for a study, he said he wanted to let Mario select. They're gonna put one black who will represent the Lower Ninth Ward. And Mario said no. I went to talk to Mario. He said let the people in the Lower Ninth Ward do it. And so Neil Douglas and Don Hubbard wanted
Aretha Haley?
Haley, yeah. Now
She wasn't from the Ninth Ward, though.
No, she wasn't, but she would have been the best thing we had anyway, based on her history.
Okay.
So I went with them, although Sherman Copeland had been my secretary. So Sherman went to Miss Luke. Miss Luke was close to Skiro, so Sherman got it. The reason we gave in to Sherman was because A.L. Davis was trying to get Reverend Landrum down there.
Right.
Okay, and it was a contest, and they didn't think I could hold up against A.L. Davis on account of his relationship with Skiro, okay?
Right.
And so then they created another committee. I was the only person out of my committee they put on that. They just couldn't not, you know, they had to put me on the committee. But Sherman was representing the city. You know, they had a guy over, this guy but Sherman was representing the city, but the committee they created, I controlled it anyway.
But you hadn't been from the Lower Ninth Ward, so what had prepared you for leadership before you came to the Lower Ninth Ward?
What?
What had prepared you for leadership before you came to the Lower Ninth Ward?
Hurricane Betsy.
Well, even before then, where did you go to school?
Oh, St. Monica's, St. Monica's, Booker T, 35, 1.5 years there.
Okay, so you finished from Booker T?
Yeah, no, 35. 1 year.
35.
You couldn't go to 35 first
So
year.
you were a sophomore, huh?
Yeah, huh?
Okay, so when you came to Lower Ninth Ward, you were what? You were already out of the service?
Out of the service, building houses.
Building housing. So you got involved basically because of the experiences coming out of Hurricane Betsy.
Yeah.
How long were you out of your house?
Hurricane Betsy?
Yeah.
Oh, for about maybe about 4 months.
That long? Okay.
Yeah. So, when you after Hurricane Betsy, if you go back down there, it'll turn you around because the refrigerators was the worst thing that happened. The smell of the refrigerators was worse than anything else. Okay. Now I don't know. I can't tell you how long I was out of my house. I wasn't that. Might have not been that long. I don't know. I think the first building I worked on would have been repaired was my house.
Okay, that's what I would thought.
And I had I think as for new construction, I had more rental property than anybody else in the Lower Ninth Ward at the same time. But when they called me for this thing, but the first meeting we had, I had fixed all my houses. I was working in Punchline Park, I think.
Okay, because we were out of our house about 2 months.
Huh? Okay. But you wasn't the carpenter.
No,
Oh, yeah.
my sister had a friend who was a carpenter, so he got us back in
I don't know how
probably
long.
November.
I don't know how long, but I had just about done all of mine.
Right.
And so what they did is that for that time, for that period, I was looking at it politically.
Right.
I was the dominant personality in the lower ninth ward for that period on account of Hurricane Betsy. On account of urban renewal. Don and Niels wanted me to be part of Soul because they needed that kind of person. They didn't have anybody strong enough in the lower ninth ward, okay? And at the same time, the people never appreciated the Thompsons. The Thompson sisters was nationally known for what they did, but it wasn't.
They went to school with me.
Okay.
Shirley, Alice.
Yeah, but it wasn't appreciated in the lower ninth ward.
Yeah.
And so what it is that Mr. Thompson, I don't know whether they told Mr. Thompson to get close to me or not, or whether, well, it was a natural thing anyway. Because when we went to Washington, D.C., he and his wife went.
Okay.
Okay. And I hadn't met Niels and them then at all.
Now, Niels ran for the legislature before you, but
That's
he
right.
lost.
That's right. And that's why it was known when we created Soul that Niels would be the first person running.
Yeah.
The reason I ran is that they needed somebody to get the black vote out in the lower ninth ward.
Right.
I wasn't supposed to win because the only thing that caused me to win is Earl Amity ran too. He split the votes, so I got 4,007. Earl got 4,007, but they had about 10 white guys running, and the most they got 2,000 apiece.
Okay.
And so we was in the runoff. And then when we got in the runoff, I beat Earl. And then Earl, I had to run against a Republican. They had over 100 registered Republicans in the city, I don't believe, okay? But Earl endorsed Satterfield. He endorsed the Republican. That's the first thing that caused me to lose. Second thing that caused me to lose, that we had a meeting with Hickey, who was the assessor.
Right, Cy Hickey.
Cy Hickey, and he said that we had a meeting out in Denver, someplace at a restaurant. Moon Lanier was there with Caligaro. And Cy said, look, I'll endorse your ticket, but I want y'all to endorse my son-in-law for judge. That was the agreement.
Who was your son-in-law?
His son-in-law.
Oh, okay.
He was Cy Hickey's son-in-law.
Okay.
And so what had happened is that Moon put the ticket out. He said, I want you to vote the Democratic ticket. But he left my name off.
What?
Yep. So I could have won that way. 200 votes I lost by. Okay? And there was one more.
So a white Republican
defeated me.
defeated you even though they didn't have any
That's right.
Republican voters.
Well, let's skip it a little bit. How you think Foster beat Mary Landrieu?
I know how you beat her.
Cleo Fields.
Right.
Same way.
Yeah.
Who put Cleo Fields in? Edwards.
Yeah.
Okay?
So you ran and you won in 1972 when we had the redistricting.
That's right, uh-huh.
So that was what, 5 of you from New Orleans, 5 blacks?
5, yeah.
Okay. That's when they formed the first Black Caucus?
Yeah, uh-huh.
So what was it like?
All of us was together, basically.
Let's see, Johnny Jackson,
Johnny Jackson,
Nick Connor.
I couldn't remember, Nick Connor, Liz Charbonnet, Dorothy Taylor, and myself.
All right.
Now, people don't know anything about Dorothy Taylor. Dorothy Taylor ended up getting to be elected the first time because Soul put up the qualifying fees. We came and vote. The people in the lower ninth ward basically campaigned a whole month for her. Coup was doing the same thing. And Bowl, I don't know if Bowl wasn't even participating in it.
Okay.
And so then when she got in the runoff, we did it again. And then about 10 or 15 guys from the Lord, no, maybe about 10 from Seoul, signed a loan thing, $500 loan.
See, I didn't know that.
Okay. But the thing about it is when I was running the second time, we asked Dorothy Taylor to come and campaign for me. She said she was too busy. And so she did 2 hours. Another thing about Dorothy Taylor is that had some attorneys. I know one guy's name was Cotton.
Yeah, Charles Cotton.
Charles Cotton, and not this other guy, I forget his name. Anyway, they were going to review the old laws about racism that was unconstitutional and give them to us, and all of us supposed to introduce them, So this guy Cotton was close to Johnny. He gave, him and Johnny talking all the time. He gave them to Johnny. Johnny handed them over to Dorothy to give out. Dorothy kept them all and just let us endorse them. I didn't like Dorothy. But she was the dominant person. She was dominant.
Okay.
She was the first woman, I guess, not just a black woman, to be head of a committee.
Right.
Health and welfare.
So what was your relationship with the governor, McKithen?
No,
Once McKithen was gone, Edwards came in. And
well, what happened is that I helped Edwards get elected.
Okay.
Well, I helped Edwards get endorsed by Seoul. Because then it came after, let's deal with Sam Bell.
Oh, I'd forgotten about Sam Bell.
Okay. They take credit, everybody say how Seoul got rid of Sam Bell. Sam was one of my best friends. Politically, he was the best. And I was with him while he was campaigning for governor. But his consulting company was run by Republicans. And so while we was out there campaigning, he was saying that on the runoff, he was going to endorse the Republican candidate, David Treen.
David Treen.
Now, David Treen, the only thing I knew about him is that he has said some stuff about states' rights.
Right.
Okay? And I was sweating over the fact that how can I tell Seoul about it? But Sam was my best friend. And so, it's kind of hard turning against your best friend. Not best friend, but
right.
I didn't have any close friends, never in my life. Anyway.
I voted for Bethune.
Mm-hmm.
You remember Harold Bethune ran also that year?
I don't remember him.
Yeah, I voted for him. He was from Shreveport, I believe.
Okay, all right.
Black guy.
Okay, all right, but okay, so, well, what happened is that Niels invited me to the mayor's office, and they had this guy representing Gillis Sloan. I always respected Gillis Sloan because just he and Hill Boggs voted for that civil rights thing.
Voting rights.
Okay, yeah.
Edwards did too. Edwards voted for it too.
No, he voted against. Not the first. No.
He voted against the civil rights act, but he voted.
Yeah, I know. Okay. I know. But I know Gillis Sloan. I didn't know what Edwards did. Okay, but I know that. I knew that Edwards voted against one of them. Okay.
The civil rights act.
Okay. All right. So, and Gillis lost.
Yeah.
And so Seoul said, now what we're going to do, we're going to make certain that we go with the winner. We're going to go with Bennett Johnson.
Right.
Okay? And the people in the Lower Ninth Ward voted for Edwards.
Right.
But, and so Bennett Johnson had won the endorsement. But Sherman Copeland called me and Pete Sanchez to meet Edwards at this hotel that he always used in the French Quarter.
Monteleone.
Yeah, there you go. And he's sitting down there talking and stuff. I said, the only way we can change Seoul vote, I said, is that you get Gillis Sloan to come back and talk to us. Because when I ran for office the first time, after you lose, the people who supported you is tight to you for a while. It takes the time to wear off. And I was feeling the same way about Gillis Long. And so I figured that if Evers, I said, you send Gillis Long back and talk to us, because Gillis Long was endorsing Evers. I said, Gillis Long can change that vote. He did. And that's how Evers got a hold of Dorothy Taylor, because Don Hubbard said, well, I could get Dorothy Taylor for you. But in the end, I think I made a mistake about Edwards, because Edwards, after the time after I was out, but after the time he beat David Duke, he didn't pay the black community back.
No. But even before that, remember, he signed the right to work.
I didn't know that.
He signed the right to work.
I wasn't around then.
He signed the right to
That's
work.
what I'm saying, okay? Okay, so he didn't pay the black community back. He put Foster in there. He put her in there on account of those deals he wanted to work, you know, those gambling deals that he wanted to do and stuff like that. Now, so he gave us Foster instead of Mary Landrieu. Mary Landrieu would have been, I'm not that crazy about the Landrieux, because I had a dealing with Moon Landrieu where he said he's going to push me out of politics completely.
Why?
Well, because I had got caught up into a police deal in my neighborhood, in front of my house, where I refused to change my testimony because the police wanted to do it in my neighbor, okay? And so what they was doing, they were putting policemen in front of my house, threatening me. I called Neil Douglas and them about it. I said, don't tell them anything, because they could shoot you and drop a pistol on you, okay? But so Don Hubbard did this for me. He called a meeting, a citywide meeting. They said, well, let's do like the Black Panthers. Let's protect Teddy House. So they had people sitting in front of my house every night. And they had policemen on both of the corners, but they wouldn't park in front of my house. And I asked Morris Jones, I knew he was one of them who was sitting out there. I didn't know everybody who was out there, because they was from different parts of the city. And I said, oh, do you all carry weapons? He said, Teddy, you wouldn't want to know. And I said, and then one time I was coming home at nighttime, I saw the bushes by my house move. I saw a black woman walk out there with a rifle. And so at the same time, I was dealing with Neil Douglas and his whole law firm, and they was trying to get me to take the deal that the police department wanted me to take, is that they had all kind of felonies charged against me, but I did nothing wrong. And they said, if you promise, they'll take the felony, just put a misdemeanor, you pay $35, and then you'll be out of it. But then what they would do is leave this guy by himself. You see, really, I jumped up, because I got to tell you, the day the police thought I did it wrong. A couple of days before, police was beating this guy up.
Was that Allen?
Yeah, Alan Sims, okay?
I remember that.
Okay. And so my wife, I don't know how my wife did it, but I wasn't there. My wife came over there and made the police back off.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to him with Pierce Thompson, that Mr. Thompson's son.
I know, Pierce was in my class. I taught Pierce here.
Okay, all right, Pierce Thompson, and my cousin, my first cousin, who was Dwight Ott, and he was the first.
Dwight was your cousin?
First cousin, still is.
No, Dwight is dead.
No, he ain't.
Dwight Ott?
Dwight Ott not dead.
I thought Dwight had died.
I talked to, last time I had talked to Dwight about two.
Dwight used to live in Pointers Range Park?
Yeah,
He went to school out here.
No,
I thought he was dead.
No, I spoke to him about 2 years ago about some family issues, property issues and stuff like that.
How about that?
Anyway, he was studying at Loyola University, journalism. He was the first black journalist at Time-Picayune. He said that was some of the hardest days of his life. That's why he left and went up north. Anyway, Mr. Thompson, parent, and Mr. Thompson, and his daddy said they couldn't afford to pay what Nielsen want to charge $1,000 a piece. I agreed to pay all three. Okay, and so then every time I go see Nielsen, them was Lotus Eli mostly trying to convince me to take the deal because blacks never won a case like that, and you're going to go to Angola.
Yeah.
And so they had me shook up on that. But what happened is that when they realized I wouldn't back down, they called me up and said they got Alan Sims in the case too. They're going to take him in also. I said, how much you going to charge him? And say, nothing. That means they say they had worked the deal out already, all right? And so when I went to court, me and my wife there and stuff, and we didn't go in, you know, sitting on the outside. But the inside of the court was full with students from Southern of Baton Rouge. And this guy, Alan Sims, was going to Southern Baton Rouge. And they had it showed up in such a way that if Alan Sims would have been found guilty, there was going to be a riot in New Orleans. But Niels and them knew that all the while. That's why they took him in, and they might have had set it up. Lotus Eli and Don Hubbard thinks like that. You got to understand something about Don Hubbard. Don Hubbard was one of the smallest politicians in the city of New Orleans.
Okay.
Okay, but his hand, you never would see his hand. Okay, I remember Don was boasting about the fact that Edmund Lombard was how they got Edmund Lombard elected. If it wouldn't have been for me, Edmund Lombard wouldn't have got elected. I had fell out with Soul. We wasn't talking to each other, and except this guy, Arthur Simmons, I think his name, they called him Ratty Raid.
Yeah.
And he told me that in the election, Lombard was in the runoff with this guy who was in that position, that's whatever you call it.
Clerk of court.
Okay. And they couldn't get Moon Lanyard to endorse Lombard on account of Moon Lanyard said there's an agreement among those guys who have the citywide position that you endorse each other.
Okay.
And Moon and Niels and them couldn't do it publicly because Don must have been working in City Hall then. Niels getting all the kind of poverty program contracts, Sherman City Hall, Dan Vincent on TCA.
Right.
They can't do that publicly.
Right.
So I told them, I went to Sherman House. I called a meeting. And I said, look, I'll help y'all. I said, I'll get the black legislators to call Niels out, call Moon out. And so we had a meeting at Little Charbonnet office. We had the television there and stuff. We talked about Moon not backing what you call him. That's forced Moon hand.
Okay.
The only thing hurt about it, I didn't want to make up with him, but Edwin Elmore never told me to take you. Never told. And the reason Edwin ran is because at that time, because of the governor's race, Soul had over $100,000, and they didn't want to put that on Pete Sanchez, because Pete Sanchez was being controlled by Moon.
Well, he had a department. He was Department of what? Property Management.
Yeah, yeah, he controlled the Moon. Moon had control of him and CICO. You understand? And so, and then you talk about Pete Sanchez. Pete Sanchez never did own that property management thing. When I ran and lost, the time I talked about Moon,
Yeah.
okay, he became mayor. He offered Neil Douglas register of voters. That was putting him in position to be the next mayor. Neil turned it down. He said didn't pay enough money.
Mm.
And so what they did is say, well, we'll give you the opportunity to pick the first department head. I was with Sam Bell in Florida because Sam was trying to get me a contract in Florida. They called me long distance, said, the Soul organization, he'll say, since Teddy ran, sent he lost, and Moon didn't keep his word, we're going to let Teddy pick the department head. Now, Teddy could have picked Teddy.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's not my causes. I didn't, And so I was out the lower ninth ward, and so I picked Pete. That's how Pete got to be.
Okay.
He never owned a thing.
Well, I was always surprised how he got it.
No.
I didn't know what his strength was because.
No strength, no strength, no strength. It was like the same thing when Sam Bell, when he came back, he went to consultant school, got a consultant.
Yeah.
He got a contract from the Lower Ninth Ward and desired to be their housing consultant too. And so he wanted to pick somebody for the Lower Ninth Ward I didn't know. I said, no, what we're going to do, we're going to pick Mr. Thompson. That's the only time me and Sam Bell had differences, except for the last time in the Lower Ninth Ward. We had to fight in the neighborhood council for that. And I got Mr. Thompson because I feel the Thompson family had paid so much.
Oh, yeah.
And so Mr. Thompson didn't know nothing about running any, what you call him. He was a laborer. I don't know if he had a high school education. So I went and got Thomas Jasper because he had been in my committee.
Okay.
And I knew he had served in the Army as in the office, you know.
Right.
Okay, and he could type.
Right.
That's how Jasper got in. And like Sherman, I fought to keep Sherman out of there because I had to fight Sherman when he was with Skiro. And in fact, when Skiro sent his plane all the way to Texas to get approved, I don't know if it was Houston or Dallas. So I convinced Sol, that was before Sherman applied to be in Sol. Sol sent me, Sam Bell, and Glapion out to check it out and to make certain that they don't, you know, they ignore all the stuff that the committee wanted to do.
Right.
And I was the one there who, the meeting was all over up in Texas, and it looked like the city was going this way, and Sherman was doing this thing for the people. I got up there and beat it down. They rejected the plan. They made adjustments to the plan, and that was before Sherman offered to get in Sol. And at the same time, Sherman is the cause of Moon Lanier being mayor instead of John Petrie.
Yeah.
Neil Douglas and Don Hubbard had promised Petrie the endorsement for $5,000. And the Lower Ninth Ward was hooked on Moon on account of when they had those riots in Watkins.
Yeah.
They had the American Friends. Those whites came into the Lower Ninth Ward. We had a meeting on, I can't remember the name of this church, on Flood Street, and they was trying to get the people to clear some area on Florida for a playground. You know, they had railroad land there, and a lot of weeds.
Right.
And I got up there and I told them, I said, you ought to come because the television will be out there. They said, yeah, but you ain't going to be out there. You're going to be out in Pontchartrain Park working. And so I said, no, I'm going to take off. I'm going to be out there cutting grass. I swear, I'm going to be out there cutting grass with y'all. So while they had the white riots, they had television sets out there watching. And I was out there cutting grass. If you get those, you know, with everybody else.
Yeah.
And so Skiro was out of town. Moon Lanier was acting mayor. Moon Lanier sent heavy equipment out there, clearing the whole thing off. We had a love affair with Moon Lanier, man. You know, Lord Night, everybody, you know. But Neil and them thought they had desire in Florida. You know, we had 5 areas to vote, you know, Gentilly, well, you know, around Rosemont. They had Pontchartrain Park. They had Desire, Florida.
And the Lower Ninth.
And Lower Ninth. But so what happened is that Sherman was able to convince, Don didn't show up at the meeting. Sherman was able to convince Ratty Red, who was kind of running, like president of Desire, Florida area, to swing the vote to Moon. Because Sherman he was bringing jobs. People in the Lower Ninth Ward and Desire, especially the Lower Ninth Ward, he was in Seoul, and They was getting all the jobs. He was getting all the jobs, okay? And so Sherman beat out Don and Sherman, Don and Niels. Now, when you talk, hear Don Hubbard talk about people, he don't talk about Niels, you understand, because the person who was making the money in Seoul, and everybody was in there for economic reasons, Niels was making all the money. Because what he's done is that when every time there come endorsements up for a judge, Niels, wouldn't touch it. Niels, that's up to you. So when those judges Niels bring a case to a judge that he endorsed, he gonna get a better settlement and stuff like that. So Niels always made the most money. But what turned me against Niels was when I had bought 2 lots to build a daycare center in the Lower Ninth Ward. 2 of them together. Perkins and James drew the plans. I think the price was $75,000. And neighborhood council approved it. Sherman had to get the money from Sherman. He came to me and said, look, he said, I'm not going to approve this thing unless you you got to pay me. He said, because I'm taking risks. Now, I own a lot of property, but I didn't have a lot of money. I couldn't get bonded. I said, no. I said, I'm going to bring this to the neighborhood council. I said, I'm going to bring this to Seoul. But that morning, Niels called me up and said, I want you to come down there right away. He and Sherman. Sherman said, what we're going to do, we're going to raise the price $15,000. I want that $15,000. Niels encouraged me because it was Niels. That was, and so what happened is that...
That was $15,000 for Sherman? Or for
Sherman. But I had to give Niels, the way I paid him, I couldn't pay it direct to Sherman. I had to pay Niels $5,000 at a time. Okay, so Sherman got $15,000 from me. And then they had this clinic that they was building with Dr. What his name is? From Tulane. Huh?
Dr. Carter?
No, the white doctor that went to jail.
Oh,
okay.
Beasley.
Huh?
Beasley, huh?
Yeah, Beasley. And so what had happened with that is that Sherman didn't want me to bill him. He said, I want Dr. Reverend Shelton. He built the one in Desire. And the only reason he wouldn't want me to bill it is that he wouldn't try to shake me. He couldn't shake me down again. Oh, because of another reason. While I was building a daycare center, the plans was incomplete. I had about $15,000 worth of change order. Brought it to Sherman and said, yeah, I'll give it to you, but you got to make it 30. Okay? All right? And so he didn't want me. I said, no. I said, I'll just do it and don't make no money.
Yeah.
Okay? I did it, didn't make it. In fact, I lost. Okay? Because because I didn't want to give him another $15,000. And so then when it comes to the daycare center, he insisted that this guy, he was a good contractor to this guy Shelton. In fact, the kind of work he did, okay, he was good.
You're talking about Dave Shelton?
I don't know, he was a preacher too.
Yeah, Dave Shelton. That's
okay, he was good. He was good.
Yeah.
Okay, and so he wanted to give that to Shelton for some reason. And me had
Cousins.
Huh?
Cousins.
Okay, the only reason he wanted to give it to Shelton because he was shaking Shelton down. That means they said they did 14 other ones. That means he shook them all down. Okay? The only people, they had about 3 contractors, black contractors in the city who was getting bonded. And that was...
Rudy Bonds was one of them.
Not at the time.
Not at that time?
Right after the time. Right around the time.
Okay.
Yeah, around the time. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. If I would have stayed away from this involvement, I would have been in the same shape Rudy was in. I used to wake up in the morning thinking about contracting. I would build houses 2 and 3 times faster than Rudy. All this, before then we broke up. You know what I'm talking about. And Rudy asked me, he said, "Don't run for office." This guy, Mark Sigler, who's connected with the mafia,
Yeah.
he told Rudy to tell me, "Don't run." He said, "You're gonna get all messed up." And so I didn't pay no attention. In fact, The only reason I ran the second time, is because every time I saw somebody say, "You're going to run again," you almost won. You almost won by 200 votes. I didn't run. I really didn't want
So
to.
you ran against Jasper?
Oh, no, I'll let Jasper run.
Okay.
I didn't. No, on account of the new Constitution. The new Constitution is the thing.
Were you a delegate?
No,
Okay.
but when they had to vote on it, the legislators had to vote on it.
Yeah.
I was definitely against it.
Okay.
You understand? Because what it did, people never told people the whole truth. When he campaigned for it, he said that you don't have to pay any taxes.
Mm-hmm.
He never told you who got to pay the taxes. And that was the working poor, the renters, poorest black folks in the city.
That's right, because they got rid of the homestead exemption.
That's right, and they shift the money to them. And so what happened is that I think I'm the only one who ever wanted to debate with Edwards, because he called a meeting at Brenner's trying to, the place in the French Quarter?
Yeah, I know it. Brenda.
Okay. He tried to get the legislators to support it. And they had about 30, 40 people from the metropolitan area, and I was the only one who opposed it. And we debated, and I won.
Okay.
But they voted the other way anyway. But I'm telling you, I told, he couldn't say nothing. I didn't understand everything. That's why I turned against the Archbishop. Doris Castle was my legislative aide then. I tried about 6, 7 times to try to get in touch with him so we could talk about it. Wrote letters, everything. L. Davis and them supported it. It was just poor. That was about the worst thing you could do to the city of New Orleans. The working poor, the poorest people in the city. I found out afterward, because I changed the religion. I started reading the Bible more. Jesus talked about the least of your brethren. Okay?
Yeah.
All right? And so it was about being a Catholic. I don't remember anybody telling me that. But they did in the Catholic Church. They did read the gospel.
Right.
Every Sunday you got something out of the gospel. I don't know where it come from, but I just knew it was wrong to take taxes off the people who could afford to pay it and put it on the people who couldn't afford to pay it. You see, they had other stuff, all this stuff going on at the same time.
Is that why Sol refused to endorse you when you ran for re-election?
I never run for re-election.
Well, you didn't run in '76?
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I quit.
Okay.
Because I knew that anything I do as a state representative could never make up for that one thing. And the way they fool people, like, for instance, Edwards never told people that it was just property tax, residential property tax. So when he said that if you vote for this, you wouldn't have to pay taxes,
Yeah.
he didn't say that. People thought he meant personal taxes too, like taxes on automobiles. So poor working people voted for it. And I got one shot at it, and Iris Kelsey had me on the television with Johnny and them supporting it, and all these other people supporting it. Johnny had his reason on account of Southern University being...
Getting his own board.
Yeah, okay. So we used to debate that all the time afterward. And
But you did favor that, huh?
yeah, but I didn't think the board was more important than the poor people.
Yeah. So you didn't support Edwards when he ran for re-election in '76?
No.
Okay.
But I wasn't running anyway, though.
All right. So when did you leave Sol?
I left Sol when Sol voted against flood protection.
Okay.
I left Sol.
Why did they vote against flood protection?
Well, what happened is that I found out that later from Arthur Simmons, Ratty Red,
Yeah.
that when McKitton was governor, he gave an appointment to Neil Douglas some kind of position, where he go to Baton Rouge once a month and got $4,000 a year.
Okay.
And Edwards didn't give it to him. And so that was supposed to be to show Edwards, that we could be negative Edwards if, So they voted against all the, what do you call it, amendments?
Yeah.
Amendments that Edwards supported. And so they had another amendment, two reasons really. Another amendment where they was going to allow the school board to sell bonds at 8% interest instead of 6%. We had $50 million sitting up there that they couldn't sell the bonds because interest rate was higher. And it had been sitting up there for a couple of years. And at the same time, the cost of construction was going up 10% a year. So it just made sense to allow them to sell it at 8% so they could sell it.
Right.
Okay? And so they didn't even look at the bill as anything that Edwards supported. They voted against.
I think all of the amendments failed that year.
Huh?
Didn't it? All of the amendments failed?
Yeah,
Yeah,
It's not, it would have failed anyway, but they shouldn't have voted against it.
Okay.
They shouldn't have voted against it. You just don't do those kind of things. Now, like the flood protection, if Edwards would have fought for the flood protection like he would have fought for the Constitution, it would not have failed.
Okay.
If Moon would have fought for flood protection like he fought for his partner Caligari getting Supreme Court justice, it wouldn't have failed.
Okay.
Now, afterward, I found out that while Guy Lemieux it was the gates that they wanted to put at the Gulf, to keep the water from coming in. We didn't know that England was putting the same thing at the same time, protecting the Thames River by London.
Thames River.
Okay. See, Guy Lemieux didn't understand how to sell his stuff in the first place. And it was like a levee protection man concerned about something that the governor and the mayor should have been concerned about to that extent. Maybe what's his last hurricane? Katrina. If those gates might have been there, you might have not got all that water into the Pontchartrain Park. Lake Pontchartrain. Because what had happened, the study showed that in front of the hurricane, you get about 10 feet of water more. And they was talking about if the wind would hit the water a certain kind of way with 10 feet, it would push it on to the opposite side of Lake Pontchartrain, and then the back side of that storm would hit it and push it out. Well, that storm haven't hit yet.
What was your relationship with Dutch Murillo?
I used to be I built some houses for Dutch.
Okay.
But Dutch and Soul didn't get along. I think that when Earl Amity endorsed that Republican, he was working out of Dutch's office. And another thing is that after the new Constitution came into effect, the city was allowed to, instead of passing taxes that people voted on, they was allowed to do fees. The city council could do fees instead of taxes.
Yeah.
Before you had to vote. And so Dutch came along and wanted to pass fees on people, property, $100 a piece. I don't care whether your lot is 25 by 50, or it's a half a block long on St. Charles Avenue, just $100.
Right, I remember that.
Okay? And so I was interviewed about it. I wasn't a state representative then, and I opposed it, but through an interview. So when Dutch got ready to attack the people who opposed it and who didn't pay, they had about 20 white folks, 1 black person, me. But Then Guy Lemieux wanted to run for office against Dutch. They sent Bernal Sanders to me because I was kind of part of Guy Lemieux protection committee on a kind of breaking away from soul. I needed some buffer. And they asked me to run against Dutch. Now, in order to break him up on the black vote, I turned them down. And they were going to pay me some good money. And I turned them down. And in fact, I campaigned in the lower ninth ward for Dutch, okay?
Is Parnell Sanders still living?
I don't know. But he was...
I haven't heard from him.
He was kind of Uncle Tomish guy. You know, he wasn't. I went to Booker T with him freshman year. Okay. And didn't see him until I ran across Guy Lemieux. Now, I made mistakes, you know, like.
How much time do you have?
We just hit an hour. So
okay.
I made mistakes. Harry Connick was a mistake.
Right.
You know, big mistake. Well, when I got Evans endorsed, the part I played, that was a mistake because in the end, Foster took away, he took away the welfare. I got welfare 3 times. He took that away. Well, I read Edwards' book. He talked about what he did for welfare. He didn't do those things. Every time he said no. I'm disappointed in Johnny. Johnny never told anybody what I did for him. Especially that prison, whatever you want, juvenile home. He was putting in a bill for a juvenile home that wasn't going to pass because he had made an agreement with Edwards. I don't know what the agreement was, that he wasn't going to put it in. And Kevin Riley, who was my appropriation committee chairman, and he and I was close. He was raising hell about Johnny putting that bill in anyway. And same day I see Harry Connick, and Harry Connick say, well, I say, oh, what you up here for? He said, I'm leaving right now. He said, I've been to a committee meeting and Dorothy Taylor and them wouldn't let me do anything but this thing about a study of paroling and stuff like that. And they voted me down. I'm leaving right now. And Harry was leaving. I was thinking about Harry was running down the steps, him and the chauffeur, whoever he was with. I said, come back, Harry. I said, I could help you override the committee meeting. You know, whether the committee rejects it, you don't really override it. I said, I'll get that thing overridden for you. And so what I did is that, he said, how? I said, you get Joan Hinkle. Now, Joan Hinkle's a racist. I want him to back me up. And so then he came back to me and said, well, they say, I'll ask around. They say, I never heard it. They say they haven't heard of anybody having the committee meeting overridden unless it was the governor, you know. I said, I can do it. And so next day, when they was reporting it, you know, favorable, unfavorable, then they said Marchand put in an article, a thing to override the committee meeting. You know, committee, what you call it. Boy, that was Dorothy Taylor committee. Dorothy jumped up that's a little sharper than say she jumped up that high. And so we was debating it. And so I told him, I said, let me tell you one thing, which was the truth. I said, I remember when me and my mother used to be able to walk to church at nighttime. You can't do it no more. I said, Johnny was defending Dorothy. Yes, he got up and spoke, and I said, and then I said, Johnny, I said, he got burglar bars on his house now. I said, people got burglar bars, you know, and blah, 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 okay? White boy came up to me and said, look, he said, you could win this thing, but Dorothy's walking around getting people to support her. And so he said, you better go behind her. So I walked behind her. As the guys was committing themselves, I said, no, I said, this. So I said, will you be responsible for somebody getting killed? Or something like that, okay? So I won. Now, I had never heard anybody else ever since then overriding a committee meeting, okay? So I rode back. I didn't want to deal with the blacks then, so I rode back home. Next morning, I got back to the house. Johnny Jackson said, boy, he said, the blacks had a meeting against you last night and early this morning. But when I walked in there, all the white boys were patting on my head. Good job, Teddy. Good job, Teddy, you know.
Yeah.
I said, good. So Johnny Jackson's bill came up that day. And I got up there and said, y'all patted me on my back and told me it was a good job. And they was glad. What they liked more is I stood up against Dorothy. I knew what it was all about, standing up against Dorothy. They were scared of Dorothy. And I said, I don't know whether I'm right or wrong. I said, everybody's speaking out against this prison for juvenile things, and yet and say you want to keep kids in the prison but adults. I said, maybe I was wrong.
Yeah.
I got that vote. Johnny got to prison. Johnny got to prison. Same thing. The students at Southern University wanted a student union, you know, New Orleans.
Right.
Student union building. Edwards said they don't have enough money for it. We got met with Edwards. I said, well, y'all ought to be trying to improve your libraries first, I say, and other stuff around there, because I talked to Dr. Bashful, Dean Bashful. He said he preferred to see that, you know. He said in the summertime, they would have to go to other libraries, maybe here, I don't know, name a couple of libraries, because it was just too hot in there.
Yeah.
And they didn't have enough books. And so I said I wasn't going to help them. But then what happened, I got the capital improvement, what you call them, and Evans said they didn't have enough money. I'm on a appropriation committee, just two of us, two blacks.
You on the appropriations?
That's right,
Okay.
Okay, two blacks and nothing but the rest right, was 15 of us. And so they had either the forestry and the agriculture and forest department was trying to, and on the appropriation committee, what I saw they gave me the capital improvement agent bill about a couple of days before it, you know.
It came up.
Yeah, it was coming up. And so, but the students from Southern was there every day. They wasn't speaking to me because I wasn't supporting them. Okay. Only black, you know, they had two blacks, Alphonse Jackson too. Anyway, but then when I saw the appropriation committee, I saw all these colleges getting money for expansion of football fields and stuff. I said, oh Lord, I said, no, I'm gonna change I'm gonna see what I can do about this, you know, because Evers said they ain't had enough money.
Right.
I
He
said,
was supporting the other bill.
yeah, and so Evers had reason not to want one for Southern University on account of when they had the student strike at Southern, those students abused him verbally, okay? Mm-hmm. And so what had happened is that he was against them. And so I said, I didn't know, I know I was going to support him. But luckily, they had a agriculture and forestry committee, something had a dedicated $10 million or something like that, and that would get every year without going to the appropriations committee. But the new Constitution took it away from them, and they was trying to put it back. The vote was 7-8. When I found out that my vote was a critical vote, I said, I made a mistake. I didn't want to vote that way.
Yeah.
And then they say, it's too late, Teddy. But, you know, those people who understand the law say, so, oh, no, you can reconsider the vote by which the last vote is taken. And they voted, and I voted the other way. And then they're going to make a motion to reconsider, you know, do the reconsider. And then all the people on the appropriation committee will start talking about what they're going to do to the budget. We ain't going to be able to get our football field. They were saying all the things I wanted them to say. And I said, I'll tell you one thing. I said, look, I said, y'all know I'm not running for re-election, but I'm representing the legislators in New Orleans, the black legislators in New Orleans. I said, Suno, they're going to run on Suno. I said, and the governor not giving New Orleans anything, Suno anything. He giving you all of this. So that Charlie Roma came up to me and said, "Look, Ted, you made your point." I said, "No," I said, "I want to hear the governor say it."
Mm-hmm.
And so, in the middle of a motion, this guy, I'll think his name. Anyway, he called for a join. Oh yeah, we joined right away. Now, what Edwards had to do, Edwards had to make a move before this get to the news. And so I know he's gonna call us to the Capitol House. I'll have a meeting somewhere. He called us to the Capitol House, and he called the Budget Committee, the Commerce Committee. I think that was the Senate, and our committee. And what he really called for is just one thing about that one issue. And I told Kevin Riley, I was able to get to him because I was trying to keep him looking at Evans because he'd give me some hard looks. And I told him, I said, "Look, those students in Southern University is going back to demonstrate." He told Edwards said, "God damn it, Teddy, you call them up and tell them they're going to get their building. But if they demonstrate, they ain't going to get a damn thing." I called Bashville. They got their building. Okay? Now, it didn't get in the news. He was trying. If it would have got in the news, it would have been negative among blacks. That would have been a statewide thing, given all the whites thing.
Right.
Okay, so he had to make a move fast enough to keep it out of the news. But when the building was built, I wasn't a state representative. They didn't invite me.
They didn't invite you.
So
Did Bashville know your role in it?
Yeah, I got a letter from Bashville. I talked to Bashville. I saw him at a restaurant, Duke Chase, one time. I said, "Look," I said, "this is what they did to me, you know." I never went in that building. They tore it down now, I think.
Right.
Okay? But they got this guy, Charles. That if you could contact this guy, Charles, he was I met him about 12 years later, 12 years later, about 1990. And I met him at the airport, and I was in there on the phone. He just out there dancing, wanted me to hurry up and get through. He said he wanted to tell me that first time he saw one man take one vote and do so much. He said, I was there. And I said, well, I'm going to California, looking up some work. He said, no, come to Connecticut. I think he was working for Kodak. Okay, if you check him out, okay?
And his name is Charles, you say?
Last name is Charles, yeah. Oh. You just check out, you could, almost all of those guys is about in the 60s. They're living. They had too many of them there not to, you know, understand what I'm talking about? So a lot of them knew what happened. They saw it, what happened. You know, I let Johnny handle it. I said, Johnny, you handle it. Okay.
Yeah.
He had put the footwork with it. Okay. That was one moment for me. But he was working with those kids all the time.
How did you get that position on the Appropriations Committee? That's a plum.
No, endorsing Evans.
Okay.
In fact,
But I mean, there were other blacks and
no.
they gave it to you.
What happened when we endorsed Edwards,
Okay.
we didn't know what to ask for.
Okay.
And so Niels must have asked, or Don must have asked, what position? He said, Commerce and Appropriation.
Appropriations.
Now, the thing about appropriation is that I don't know how that was. I thought it was appropriation, that the governor can appoint one. No, it must be Commerce. And anyway, on Commerce, I think it was Commerce, that got one of those committees that the governor can appoint one, and one is elected by the legislators, you know, in the district.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one. And so I ran for it, and
You had to be elected?
selected.
I
But
thought the speaker appointed the.
Oh no, a part of it.
Okay.
I can't remember. But I remember that out of I can't remember how it worked, whether the appropriation or commerce. But the governor appointed one person, and then they have they create a district,
Okay.
and then the legislators in the district select the other person.
Okay. So they're elected from districts?
Yeah, and so out of our district, because I know it, I ran, and me and John Casey, the older man, was in a runoff.
Okay.
And this one Soul was the strongest because Neil Douglas got on the phone and called some of those white guys in that district. And he made them change their vote.
And they voted for you?
Yeah. Edwards had promised to appoint me. And I had it anyway. So he had to appoint the other guy. But I had it.
So
No.
did you have a good relationship with the speaker?
Oh, yeah.
Was Bubba Henry the speaker at that time?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, they don't want me to say this, but the word nigger was said once.
Okay.
And that was the time when Woody Jenkins he was a Democrat then,
Right.
he was a racist, was trying to destroy a deal that was made between the black and white Democrats, how they was going to go to the Democratic National Convention. And he's a good speaker, real good, but smart and evil. And so Dorothy Taylor and them was getting up there defending it, but he'll always put them down with his talk. He could talk. And in the end, I got up there and I said, when I was a child, I said, I used to play with white kids. I said, they used to call us niggers. We used to call them poor white trash. I said, but we didn't really mean it. We was playing the next couple of days. I said, but Woody got nigger written all over this bill. Voted it down. Because what happened is that he was calling us nigger. And that's the only time Bubba Henry had to deal with the word nigger. He didn't tell me nothing. I said, Woody, and Woody wouldn't get up and respond. I said, you got nigger written all over this bill.
Okay, we got 5 minutes. A couple of questions. What was your relationship with Moon Landry?
We had after I got into that Allen Sim thing,
Yeah.
I was more conscious of police brutality. Real conscious then. Before I was just like everybody else. Nothing really was happening in the lower ninth ward, but I was conscious of what happened across the city then. Moon Lanier called a meeting one time at all the black organizations, and he was talking about how good things were. And it was at Fairmont Hotel, and I told him, I said, he's talking about everything except what the police doing to blacks.
Yeah.
And so this guy who had Hayes Chicken Shack, he came, he attacked me.
Henry Hayes.
I don't know his first name.
Yeah, Henry Hayes.
Okay, he attacked me, because Uncle Thomas kind of thing.
Yeah.
Don Hubbard defended me, said something good about me. But everybody else in there was quiet as hell. And I had been, before the meeting, I had been talking to all these guys, that like people from St. Bernard who've been tough and stuff about police brutality and what the police doing, shooting black folks and getting away with it. All of them was agreeing with me, but everybody was quiet. And so after the meeting, Moon catches up with me. He said, don't you ever come in and rain on my parade? I said, well, don't you ever come and invite me to a party if you're going to want me to support a lie?
Yeah.
Okay, so then Sherman Copeland was riding with me. I was riding Sherman Copeland back to the city hall to pick up his car. Caught us in the parking lot. And he runs over to me and won't continue the conversation. We were arguing back and forth. I was in an argument until he said the black folks love me more than they love you. I got more votes than you. Tears came to my eyes. Okay. So they broke up the argument. But then when I was meeting with But after that, the next morning in staff meeting, Moon talking about how he going to run me out of politics.
What?
He was going to get that Larry McKinley. That time before they broke up those things in the single member district, you know,
Yeah.
he going to get Larry McKinley to run against me, to embarrass me as much as he couldn't run me out of politics. And then he going to do everything, because Niels was running to it, as qualified to run. He going to do everything he could do for Niels, okay? So evidently he talked to Niels that night. So when they redrew
the line.
Yeah, redrew the line, but Larry couldn't win. Next thing you know, so Moon ended up endorsing me, you know, go on the radio endorsement and stuff, okay? But there was a tension between us all the time.
Okay.
And then what made it worse is everybody, all the guys, and said, I heard you wanted to kick Moon behind, you know? I said, no, we wasn't doing that. I said, we was arguing, you know?
Yeah.
And so when I had a meeting about this guy, Edwin Lombard, that's what Don Hubbard said, yeah, he said, every time me and Moonline, you get in an argument, I said, tell him I wish I would let Teddy Marchand kick your behind. Then he get angry, he said, I win all the arguments, Moon gets out of shape. And so what had happened, I told Moon, I don't know, first, second, maybe third year, I said, you and I had that argument in City Hall, I said. And I just found out that Don Hubbard used to boast about that. I said, I never intended to fight you.
Yeah.
I said, we was arguing about something. Then he bust out and laughed. Then we got to be okay.
One last question. You don't live here now, but what do you think about the future of the city of New Orleans?
I don't know, because the thing about it is crime is heavy.
Yeah.
And maybe if we would have paid more attention to the least of our brethren back during that time, would not be as heavy. You understand the thing about it? We never did really too much to lift the poor. In fact, I had some school teacher friends around the time I left that was calling the students low-life niggers.
Yeah.
How can you have school teachers calling friends low-life niggers?
Yeah.
And then, you know, this Acorn, I think, originated around New Orleans.
Yeah, I remember.
That came closest to fulfilling Martin Luther King.
That's right.
March on Washington that he wanted. But when did we lose it? When we got a black president, we lost it. And there's nothing. Since I'm a Protestant now, I read the Bible more.
Okay.
I understand Matthews 25:41. Those who do for the least of my brethren do it unto me, but those who don't.
Yeah.
And then I read Andrew Young's something about something, I can't get it exactly, like more expected of those who have.
Yeah.
And so there's a responsibility that we feel when they voted for that Constitution. You force poor people further into poverty.
Yeah.
If you trace back most of these people who committing all those crimes, I bet you they was poor parents way back.
Mm-hmm.
We never tried to lift them up.
Yeah.
And in fact, my brother's son was killed this year.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he wouldn't have been killed if we would have been paying more attention to the poor. You just cannot, if you make it yourself, you just cannot enjoy it all for yourself and your family. That's all. Jesus said that. Otherwise, you're not a Christian.
Lifting other people up.
That's right. Yeah. And so what happened is that all this time I was doing all these things, I wasn't thinking those things.
Right.
But I'm glad I did these things because they kind of fulfill.
Well, I think what happened was the civil rights movement was basically for middle-class blacks.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't do very much for people at the bottom.
You know one thing? And nobody told you that, talk about the fact that the children in Birmingham who moved the president was poor people. They were the poor. They come from the projects.
Yeah.
The black church don't even know anything about black history.
Yeah.
And the civil rights movement was a black Protestant movement. You think about where you go back to Louisiana, we can start looking at all that stuff during that time. All of those people, Don Hubbard told me, and this is true, he said, if it wasn't for the black churches, they wouldn't have a place to meet.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
I was raised Catholic.
But there was some Catholics.
I know, of course.
Peter Claver.
No. There was some Catholics because they're going to always, I don't care what religion is, they're going to always have people who want to live up to doing unto others.
Right.
When Martin Luther King had that Selma watch, they had nuns, they had priests there, they had
rabbis.
Jews there, rabbis, everybody. Yeah. And we don't even understand the fact that if it wasn't the spiritual movement of the Quakers, we wouldn't have the abolitionist movement that created the Civil War.
That's right.
If you're going to study black history, you got to go back to the Quakers.
I teach it.
Huh?
Thank you, brother.
Okay.
Enjoyed it.